Right, let's get more clarity from the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs, Mosa Chabane. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, we've just seen you there speaking to my colleague Natasha Piri, explaining on the steps that happen next. But in the midst of that, there's been a lot of reaction, and your decision taken by your committee, questions have been asked, and NGO My Vote Counts has even asked whether or not there was an urgency to have it passed, and saying that this legislation was passed pending a judgment by the Western Cape High Court. Perhaps talk to us about how you came to the decision and whether or not it was one you had to take urgently.
No, thanks very much and for inviting us. As you have articulated clearly that it was as a result of the Constitutional Court judgment that we ought to change the draft resolution on the quantum, and also the process that was undertaken to consult with members of the public. And we have interacted as members of the Portfolio Committee to arrive at that decision. Secondly is that we have passed a draft resolution, a sixth administration without the quantums in this respect, the 100,000 and the 15 million respectively. And that as a result was initiated to deal with this draft resolution. But the committee has deliberated, invited members, stakeholders and political parties to interface that informs us to take this decision. So it was important to present the decision of the Portfolio Committee before the House, and the House has considered that subject to the President when he ought to consider regulations.
So just for understanding, with this move, what you're saying is that in effect it ensures more money from unknown origins can flow into local government election campaign coffers, which means a lot is at stake come the 2026 municipal polls for all political parties grappling with the change in national unity government political landscape. A rich campaign purse will be a requisite.
Well, if you focus, listen to all the political parties when they were engaging on the subject matter on Tuesday when we presented to Parliament, there are two phrases in terms of accountability and transparency. And what is coming out of the discussions of the Portfolio Committee and all political parties within the National Assembly. Secondly, is that we've taken also a decision to review the Party Political Funding Act. As you know, that since it was enacted in 2018, it has never been assessed in terms of its effectiveness, implementation, whether political parties are confining themselves within the specific provisions of that Political Party Funding Act in terms of compliance, transparency, but also accountability, so that all of us will know which party is receiving funds, to what extent. And that's why we've initiated a process to engage with the Independent Electoral Commission to commission a study, which they've done that process, and hence they're convening all political party stakeholders to a colloquium to begin to reflect around this question. But that is an important phase to assess whether this party political funding stated its purpose. And therefore, that question will be reflected as we engage with all political parties and stakeholders and individuals that are interested in this epoch of democracy.
I mean, with some of the reaction from political parties, some have said that the auditing of funding has to extend beyond party bank accounts, while others are slamming the Electoral Commission's inability to monitor compliance with the regulations.
Well, Independent Electoral Commission, we can't blame. I don't think that there was a side of apportioning blame to the Independent Electoral Commission. What political parties, and what we get a sense from the discussion of the committee, is that there must be a mechanism to police the compliance and accountability of the political parties. And therefore, this Political Party Funding Act ought to be assessed and strengthened if we ought to make sure that there's policing and make sure that political parties are accountable. And you must know that the only focus of the Independent Electoral Commission is also to facilitate elections, to make sure that elections are fair. But also on this front, we may make sure that once we exert authority on the Independent Electoral Commission, there must be tools that make sure that give them powers to monitor and also hold stakeholders to accountability. The other view is whether we want to exert that responsibility to the IEC to police this anomaly that members of the public or individuals or political parties are raising before the committee and Parliament.
Yeah, because as we look to some of the reactions, we also note the NGO My Vote Counts, who are awaiting that judgment in the matter. I mean, what happens if the judgment says the move is unconstitutional or perhaps it was irrational? What will it mean for the stage that you're heading to as this decision is made?
Our understanding is that the My Vote Count has approached the Constitutional Court as an area of resolving disputes when there are issues, and all individuals, members of the public, are encouraged, if Parliament take a decision that you are not satisfied, either as a group or a stakeholder or an individual, you ought to appeal the Constitutional Court judgment. And the judgment have taken a decision that the Parliament has taken, adopted a resolution without the quantums. In this respect, the 100,000 and the 15 million. But Parliament may need also to correct that anomaly. That's why it was read in. In other words, we used the previous 100 million, and sorry, 100,000 and 15 million. But also the court directed Parliament to correct and also to make sure that it navigate to respond to this question of the quantums and establish a process to arrive at the different views that Parliament may need to consider. That's why we've subjected the process to public consultation, invited stakeholders to discuss around this subject matter. We found a resolve on the issue. Secondly is that you recall that since 2018, these amounts were not even amended. And that is one of the areas that we ought to consider. That's why we've arrived to change this amount and consider the 200,000 and 30 million respective. So if there's another discomfort around the decision that the Parliament has taken, in fact, the Parliament has taken, individuals or a group or NGO or political party, they can approach the Constitutional Court and will deal with that matter as it comes before the Portfolio Committee or Parliament.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, Mosa Chabane.